A Plague Tale Requiem. We're going to talk about a little bit now. This came out just this week. I'm trying to think, was it a Tuesday? I think it was the 18th of December.
Mm.
November. What
October.
month are we in? October. Thank you. Yes, Spooktober, 18th of Spooktober. It came out. Day one launch on Game Pass, which was awesome for myself and Xbox subscribers. Also on other platforms such as PC and the PlayStation 5. And again, it's capped at 30 frames per second, and people were kicking off again for some bizarre reason. But of course, it obviously runs a much higher frame rate if you've got the horsepower on your PC. But on consoles, the PlayStation 5 and Series X, I was playing it on, again, God, it's not an issue. And holy friggin' crap, this game is stunningly beautiful. It is. You can see Asobo, which are a relatively small studio, they have raised the bar over the first game, which was also a proprietary engine, very, very pretty game as well. This game is just so densely packed in every possible way, an improvement over the first one in terms of its presentation and visuals and mechanics and environments. And good lord, it is fantastic so far. I am about 3 chapters in. I'm somewhere partly the way through chapter 3, so still quite a lot more to go. But just to see where they're already taking the story of Amicia and Hugo, the Darun family, of course, from the first game, and what is happening with the Malaka, I think it's called, is the kind of plague infection of Hugo's blood, to be able to control the rats and everything like that, and how it's consuming him. Oh, it is a ride so far, and again, it is every bit as bleak and vile and disgustingly pessimistic a view of that moment in history, with the French twist and narrative twist that Asobo are giving to it. It is horrifying. It is beautiful. And I can't wait to just kind of play more of it, because I was such a fan of the first game. And the first game really felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. Of this is this tiny little indie studio. Well, it's not really a tiny indie studio. They're renowned for the Microsoft Flight Simulator games for decades. And of course, the most recent Flight Simulator is one of the most photorealistic games you have ever seen in your life. And you can literally fly around the world in real time, uninterrupted. But A Plague Tale, in a sense, felt very, very small, almost like a little kind of concept narrative game. But then it's like they have Naughty Dog level of ambitions for character animation, for narrative storytelling, for performance. And Jesus Christ, Requiem is hitting all of those beats and raising the bar. And have either of you had a chance to look at it or familiar with this series?
I am
Sarah?
super keen to play it. I actually haven't finished number 1, which is what I've been doing this week. Is I've gone back to it, and it's brilliant, isn't it? It's just, and it's, yeah. You said horrifying and beautiful, and I'm like, that's how I like to live my life. So it's perfect, and it's gross and it's tragic, but it's really clever. And I love anything with it, like a sneak mechanic being like the primary way of playing the game. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So I'm already loving game number 1. So I'm like, and you're like, oh yeah, it's like up to everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, amazing. Now I really need to get through this so I can play the second one, because it sounds incredible. But yeah, it's stunning, and it's really, some of the imagery, my God, it is terrifying. Like, yeah, some of the
Yeah.
things you have to do or have to get through in order to just, and then all throughout that you realize these are kids, these are children, and that is absolutely mad. And yeah, I'd be really curious as to like to talk to the story developers, the writers of it, and just figure out where it all came from, because it's dark. I mean, you could make a dark story. It would still be just as good if they weren't children protagonists, but they are, and it makes it
Yeah.
all the more poignant, which is very clever. It's a clever choice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many parts to the first game because you're it's fresh to you. You don't really know what to expect with the first game,
Mm.
where the rats first appear, and there's so many of them, and that is terrifying. And
Mm.
all you see are these little twinkling eyes coming out of the dark at you, and it's thinking there's like an entire ocean of these rats just s- crawling over, falling over, spilling over each other, and then you've got the sound that the kind of scratching, screeching noise that they
Mm.
make, and then and this is obviously replicated in Requiem as well, but the music is like it's like it's like all violins or cellos to do that almost oh what's the it's like the um oh god I've forgotten the director's name. It's music like you know it's a piece of music where it's like bees or bumblebees, and it's just like long drawn chords
Oh, yeah.
of stringed instruments.
Mm.
I've completely
Oh,
forgotten
the
the name
Flight
of
of the
the piece as
Bumblebee
well.
by
Yes, yeah, yeah. Fight the
is it
Bumblebee.
Wagner?
Yeah, Wagner.
Yeah, and there's a movie director, horror director, which also kind of utilizes that style of sound in his horror movies as well, which I've completely blanked on. Jesus, I need to try and correct this in the comments or something. But anyway, it's like that with the stringed instruments of just really long, uncomfortable, drawn out chords or really
Mm.
fast movement of the chords, and it's like it. You can literally picture the rats when you hear the chords, and oh my god, it's fucking terrifying. And of course, Requiem is it, I don't want to give too much away because I want everybody to experience it
Mm.
knowing very little, but safe to say, on Sarah's point about the fact that these are children having to be impacted by these like such atrocities, it weans so far anyway. I'm still very early into the game about the anguish, the actual mental anguish of what the children have to do to survive, and that's really at the moment weighing on Amicia, who's the older sister, as like, "Oh, look at these things I'm having to do to just survive and help my brother Hugo." And again, I'm so early into the game, I can't wait to see where it goes. But the stealth mechanics they've really opened up as well, Sarah.
Cool.
One of my big kind of frustrations and complaints, it felt like as soon as you were spotted, that was kind of it. It was kind of like game
That's
over.
it.
There was
Yeah.
very little you could do to recover and escape. Where they've overhauled that entirely. There's so many options now for your
Mm.
repertoire to. You've still got the classics like you can set fire to things or you can extinguish the fire, and but then they've expanded it even further. I'm not going to explain what they are. Maybe we'll come back once we've both finished it and we'll do a proper deep dive of all of the stuff. But
Love that.
the environments are just way bigger as well, so you've got more flexibility to if you're spotted and one of the heavy knights is coming toward you. First game that was pretty much game over. Now
Mhm.
you can run away, you can lose them in the tall grass, and you can regroup, and
Mm.
so there's a bit more flexibility around that, and
That's
it's
cool.
not as trial and error frustrating as what the smaller scaled first game
Yeah.
was. So
Yeah.
it is a banger of a title, and the fact that it's on Xbox Game Pass is just an extra treat for me because it's like, okay, I'm just gonna download that and try it out. Even though I was going to buy it anyway had it not been on Game Pass because I
Mm.
was such a fan of the first game. But again, Game Pass just showing its value for accessibility experiences is outstanding. And God,
Yeah.
and I haven't noticed the frame rate at all yet. It's I can tell it's not hyper smooth like
Mm.
what the first game is running on next gen, but it's snappy, it's responsive. Again, you can tweak the how fast the camera moves and things like that in the settings, so it's less noticeable of it being maybe sluggish or things like that.
Mhm.
But it's such a story driven, slower paced game as well that
Yeah.
the frame rate just feels really solid. Even if it's not, I haven't noticed if it is choppy or not. And performance on Series X anyway, is the only one I can vouch for, is just kind of solid. There's like no issues. It's not taking me out of the game or the experience for anything. I'm just really, really enjoying the narrative and the vulgarity and the horror of this French countryside that has been literally ripped apart by
Mm.
all of these waves and oceans of rats and um what do they call it, the faction. I forgot. God, my memory tonight. I've totally forgotten the faction.
Me too.
The Inquisition. The Inquisition.
Inquisition,
Sorry.
yes.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking Monty Python sketch. Monty
Yeah,
Python
yeah.
sketch. The Inquisition. That's who it
Oh
is.
God.
Not the
No,
Spanish
no one expects.
Inquisition. It's the French
Yeah.
Inquisition. Yeah. Anyway.
Does the Xbox have similar sort of haptic style stuff that the PS5 controller has? Because one of the things I noticed when I was playing it last night is that when you're anywhere near one of these big like swarms of rats, the controller is literally like kind of like vibrating in tiny little pinches all across your hands. So it feels like they're kind
Oh
of
God!
scuttling around
Wow.
inside the controller. It
Oh,
is
that's so cool.
terrifying and awesome.
On Xbox, there's basic rumble. There's a bit of rumble. It's like vibration.
Hmm.
Like if they burst through the ground, you'll get like
Hmm.
rumbles like that, like a typical vibration.
Yeah.
But clearly I'm gonna have to download it on the PS5 just to get that
Absolutely, you
extra
should.
haptic. It's like, oh my God, there's fucking something crawling around in my controller.
It's great.
Ah,
It's
terrifying!
great.
No.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So I'm gonna have to play this, aren't I? Because
Yes, you must.
there are
Gotta
too many games.
prioritize, Jamie.
I'm gonna have to move it up the list because horror is absolutely one of my favorite things on Earth, and all I can think about when you were talking was the Rats trilogy by James Herbert, which is one of the most gruesome, horrific sets of books I've ever read, and I loved it. Although, brief funny story for you, I was once reading, we were doing free reading in school, and I was reading the Rats trilogy at the time, and I was on Domain, and there was a particularly awful scene in it where someone is assaulted and fights back and pushes their thumb into someone's eye, and it is very graphic.
I always hate that. And
yeah.
And
I'm on that page, and I'm reading that scene, and then I hear the teacher's voice go, and James, perhaps you'd like to read a bit from your book. And I'm like, you don't want that. And she's like, well, no, go on. I was like, you really don't. And she was like, I'm going to have to insist. I was like, okay. As she felt the visceral pop of jelly under her thumb, she went, what are you reading? And I held it up. She went, why didn't you mention that? I was like, I did try and warn you. So, not my fault. But, so yeah, like the notion of, there are certain things that horror directors do brilliantly and games don't always do as well, which is the use of certain, techniques, like you said, like off-putting music or discordant notes or long camera angles that make you feel helpless and things like that. And it sounds like they've kind of nailed it with this, so that's definitely something I'm going to get on board with. So and rats are just awful anyway. So, and also the kids bit I haven't quite realised because I don't know a hell of a lot about this series of games. And again, that's another thing. Like, if you look at It by Stephen King, like one of the most chilling things about that is the fact it's kids fighting back against this.
Yeah.
And it just raises the stakes a bit and makes you more like, well, you can't kill the kid. That's not okay. So it's I'll push it up the list. It's sounding damn good.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where if you know a little about it, but as little as possible, then you'll get a lot from it, and it will surprise you. And that's what I got with the first game. I thought, what is this, and who is this studio? I need to know who they are. What have they done in the past? And apart from Flight Simulator, they've always done like Disney Toy Story games. Apparently, they've done those. They've done like fluff children's games. So you're thinking, clearly they've been repressed doing Disney games, and they have to just vent these horror atrocities into this new IP, and they've been bottling this up for a while. And then,
it, yeah.
yeah.
This is like
outstanding work.
Maybe this is the upside down world of like Ratatouille. That's what they're
actually. Very good. Very good.
That's you're gonna, next time you log into the Dreamlight Valley, Jamie, you're gonna have a tidal wave of rats just swarming all over the place, taking over the place, and you've done it now.
It's fine. I'll only have to either feed them or fetch stuff for them. That's all I do in that damn game. So much as I love it.
Yeah. So, listeners, viewers, highly recommend checking out A Plague Tale Requiem on Game Pass, on PlayStation, on PC. It is quite quite special so far anyway, and I'm looking forward to a proper deep dive chat about the plot and everything when Sarah eventually gets finished the first game and then dives into the second game, to be continued on a future episode of the Weekend Catch Up Club podcast, available on all good platforms. Check it out.